Good morning students. Welcome to the English class. I am Dr. Tripti Gupta from Shivjyoti Education Group. Today we are going to take up chapter number 8 from Hornbills. So students, now let us continue with our chapter, and up till now we have seen that our protagonist Middleton, he has reached on his journey to the a town, that is Hor. Okay, they reached Hor. Now let us move further from here. By late afternoon, we had reached the small town of Hor. Back on the main east-west highway that followed the old trade route from Lhasa to Kashmir. So, this is where Hor is being situated. It is on the main east-west highway on the old trade route from Lhasa to Kashmir. Lhasa is in Tibet. Okay. Now, Daniel, who was returning to Lhasa, found a ride in a truck. So, Satan and I bade him farewell outside a tire repair shop. So, finally, the companion who was along with Middleton, he just took a farewell from them and he moved towards Lhasa. He was going back. Okay. We had suffered 2 punctures in quick succession on the drive down from the Salt Lake, and Satan was eager to have them fixed since they left him with no spares. Besides the second tire we had changed, they had replaced by one that was as smooth as my bald head. So, finally, Satan, the driver, he was been trying to manage the punctures and get them repaired at a tire shop. Hor was a grim, miserable place. So, grim means a very dull and a bit sad, not having any brightness, or you can say that no excitement was there at home. There was no vegetation whatsoever, just dust and rocks, liberally scattered with years of accumulated refuge, which was unfortunate given that the town sat on the shore of Lake Mansarovar. So, what we have seen here that Tibet, this place Hor, is been a very dusty and a rocky place, and there was a lot of accumulated refuge. Accumulated means which has been collected over a lot passage of time, and refuge means waste products, okay, waste things. So, there was a lot of garbage and waste things all over being scattered everywhere. And though the city, it was on the shore of Mansarovar Lake. Tibet's most venerated stretch of water. Venerated means a very holy, sacred. Okay, so that is how this particular place is actually. Now, ancient Hindu and Buddhist cosmology pinpoints Mansarovar as the source of 4 great Indian rivers. So, according to cosmology is basically the science of universe. Okay. So, according to that ancient descriptions which is there in the science of universe, okay, it gives a description that 4 rivers, they originate from this Mansarovar lake, but actually Indian rivers, the Indus, the Ganges, the Satluj and the Brahmaputra. Actually only Satluj flows from the lake, but the headwaters of others all rise nearby on the flanks of Mount Kailash. So, headwaters means there the glacier, where the water is being collected. Okay. So, that is how these 4 rivers are being considered to get their origin from this lake. We were within striking distance of the great mountain and I was eager to forge ahead. So, it was hardly a matter of some distance which was left between Mount Kailash. So, he was very eager to move further. Forge ahead means to move ahead. Now, but I had to wait. Satan told me to go and drink some tea in Hore's only cafe, which like all other buildings in the town was constructed from badly painted concrete and had 3 broken windows. The good view of the lake through one of them helped to compensate for the drought. So, he was being asked, Satan asked him to go to and have some tea, take a break there and have spend some time over there, and that building was also been a very dull, very badly painted and not been kept properly, not very good with good aesthetics. Okay. So, but the only thing was that he was getting a very nice view of the lake. I was served by a Chinese youth in military uniform who spread the grease around on my table with a filthy rag before bringing me a glass and a thermos of tea. So, he was served a cup and a thermos of tea by a Chinese young boy who was wearing this military uniform. Half an hour later, Satan relieved me from my solitary confinement and we drove past a lot more rocks and rubbish westward out of the town towards Mount Kailash. So, somewhere around after half an hour, he was being called back by Satan and finally he was being relieved from that particular restaurant where he was being sitting, that cafe, and he finally they started moving, driving further, and there were lots of rocks and lots of rubbish. Means rubbish here is basically dirt and rubble, okay, and they were moving towards west, towards Mount Kailash. My experience in Hor came as a stark contrast to accounts I had read of earlier travelers' first encounters with Lake Mansarovar. So, our narrator, he had already he had gone through lots of stark means complete contrasting descriptions he had read about the Mansarovar lake, okay, which he had already encountered, he had seen in Hor. Okay. Akai Kawaguchi, a Japanese monk who had arrived there in 1900, was so moved by the sanctity of the lake that he burst into tears. A couple of years later, the hallowed water had a similar effect on Sivan Hedin, a Swede who wasn't prone to sentimental outbursts. So, the sight of Mansarovar lake was so spiritual, so pure and serene, and it was been like people used to get the effect of looking at that pure form of water body. Mansarovar lake was so immense on these travelers whose description he has read, okay, but he had not found it to be similar over there. He found it quite different from that period, okay, and the way they have described about that, how they felt tearful just looking at the purity of that lake. But now it was been full of rubbish and it was been surrounded by filth. So, he did not find it that as been described, okay. It was dark by the time we finally left again, and after 10:30 p.m. we drew up outside a guest house in Darchain for what turned out to be another troubled night. So, finally, they reached their destination, that is Darchain, somewhere around in the night by 10:30, and he was being moving ahead. He is going to encounter another troubled night. That night will not be a smooth one. Kicking around in the open air rubbish dump that passed for the town of Hor had set off my cold once again. So, see the way he spent some time outside his car and he was there he was sitting in the cafe. So, that made him to catch the cold again. Okay, so that is why he was been facing a problem, breathing problem. Though if truth to be told, it had never quite disappeared with my herbal tree. One of my nostrils was blocked again, and as I lay down to sleep, I wasn't convinced that the other would provide me with sufficient oxygen. So, one of his nostrils was being totally blocked, okay, because of his sinus, and he was unable to take proper breathe, and he was feeling lack of oxygen because he was been breathing insufficiently. My watch told me I was at 4760 meters. It wasn't much higher than Ravu, and there I had been gasping for oxygen several times every night. I had grown accustomed to these nocturnal disturbances by now, but they still scared me. So, finally, he was been suffering a similar kind of anxiety, breathing trouble, because of the, probably because he was at the similar height as he was when he was there at Ravu. Okay. And though he has accustomed, means now he has developed a habit of facing that particular situation, but still he was being very much scared of that troubleful night. Okay. Nocturnal disturbances are the disturbances, breathing disturbances, which occur in during the night hours. Okay. Tired and hungry, I started breathing through my mouth. After a while, I switched to single nostril power, which seemed to be admitting enough oxygen, but just as I was drifting off, I woke up abruptly. Something was wrong. So, finally, the narrator, he started breathing out from his mouth, and he was trying to pick up or to adjust in that situation, but all of a sudden he just felt that there was something which was going wrong. My chest felt strange. My chest was strangely heavy, and I sat up, a movement that cleared my nasal passage almost instantly and relieved the feeling in my chest. Curious, I thought. So, he was feeling very heavy at his chest, and he tried to clear his nostrils and nasal passage, but he was now then he was feeling okay. He was relieved. I lay back down and tried again, same result. I was on the point of disappearing into the land of Nod when something told me not to. It must have been those emergency electrical impulses again, but this was not the same as on previous occasions. This time I wasn't gasping for breath, I was simply not allowed to go to sleep. So, something was pointing out the moment he tried again, and he again got an impulse, and he was anxious, and he was unable to sleep. So, this time he was been feeling that something is there in his chest which is not allowing him to take a sleep. Sitting up once more immediately made me feel better. I could breathe freely and my chest felt fine. But as soon as I lay down, my sinus filled and my chest was odd. I tried propping myself upright against the wall, but now I couldn't manage to relax enough to drop off. I couldn't put my finger on the reason, but I was afraid to go to sleep. So, he was very feeling lots of problem while taking a sleep, and again the moment he used to lie down, he was been feeling that he should not sleep, he should not go for a sleep. So, a little voice inside me was saying that if I did, I might never wake up again. So, I stayed awake all night. So, for the complete night he was having this notion that probably it would maybe it may be his may turn to his last night. So, he should not go for a sleep. With this particular thought, he kept awake for the complete night. Satan took me to Darchen Medical College the following morning. The medical college at Darchen was new and looked like a monastery from the outside, with a very solid door that led into a large courtyard. We found the consulting room, which was dark and cold and occupied by Tibetan doctor who wore none of the paraphernalia that I had been expecting. No white coat, he looked like any other Tibetan with a thick pullover and a woolly hat. So, finally, next day morning, Satan came and he made our narrator to move. He took him to the medical college, and there he he consulted a doctor, Tibetan doctor, and he was not being found to be as similar the way doctors used to look alike. Okay, he appeared quite different, not wearing his lab coat and like that. So, finally, he explained, when I explained my sleepless symptoms and my sudden aversion or to lying down, he shot me a few questions while feeling the veins in my waist. So, the narrator, he explained that how he felt sleepless the complete night, and the doctor, he was checking his nerves and he was asking few questions. It's a cold, he said finally through Satan, a cold and the effects of altitude. I will give you something for it. So, Satan was translating it through Satan, means Satan was translating the Tibetan language for the narrator. Okay, and what the doctor told, that he has been suffering from cold and high altitude. I asked him if he thought I would recover enough to be able to do the Kora. Oh yes, he said, you will be fine. So, the narrator, he was been a bit worried that whether his state of physical health would allow him to do the Kora, to complete that project with which he has been here. So, he gave his consent that he will be perfectly fine. I walked out of the medical college clutching a brown envelope stuffed with 15 screws of paper. Screws here is like folded packet, small folded packets. Okay, and so those were the doses. So, he gave him 15 doses. I had 5 days course of Tibetan medicine, which I started right away. So, I opened an after breakfast package and found it contained a brown powder that I had to take with hot water. So, he started taking his medication, and it was 5-day medication. He took first dose, and it tasted just like cinnamon. The contents of the lunchtime and the bedtime packages were less obviously identifiable. Both contained small spherical brown pellets. They looked suspiciously like sheep dung, but of course I took them. That night, after my first full day's course, I slept very soundly like a log, not a dead man. So, he, after taking the medication for the complete day, he was able to manage a nice sleep in the night. So, he was recovering out because of that Tibetan medicine. Once he saw that I was going to live, Satan left me to return to Lhasa. As a Buddhist, he told me he knew that it didn't really matter if I passed away, but he thought it would be bad for business. So, basically Satan was not much worried about his physical state, because in Buddhism it has been considered that if your death occurs at such a nice pilgrim place which is of so high importance like Mount Kailash, so it will be a it's the best thing for you. So, in that matter, what exactly the narrator is been saying, and what he said that, but it would have been something which is going to make a business. Dachin didn't look so horrible after a good night's sleep. It was still dusty, partially derelict, and punctuated by heaps of rubble and refuse, but the sun shone brilliantly in a clear blue sky, and the outlook across the plain to the smooth Himalayas commanded by a huge snow-capped mountain, Gorilla Mandhata, with just a wisp of cloud suspended over its summit. So, finally, in the morning, the narrator, he was able to find the first view of Darchen, and what he found, that it was beautiful. He found brilliantly shining sky. It was blue and shining with the sunshine was bright, and he was looking towards the southern side, and he found snow covered mountains over there. Okay, the town had a couple of rudimentary general store selling Chinese cigarettes, soap and other basic provisions, as well as the usual strings of prayer flags. So, there were provision stores, okay, general stores, and there were lot of things, commodities, or you can say merchandise, which was there along with the prayer flags. In front of one, men gathered in the afternoon for a game of pool, the battered table looking supremely incongruous in the open air, while nearby women washed their long hair in the icy water of narrow brook that babbled down past my guest house. So, there was lot of happening things. There was a game of pool also which was going on, and there was a table which was being kept over there. Okay. And here this table was actually battered, means broken table, okay. And some of the ladies, they were also taking a bath, they were washing their hair in the brook. Brook means a small narrow stream of water, okay. Darchen felt relaxed and unhurried, but for me it came with a significant drawback: there were no pilgrims. So, when he found that Darchen was quite relaxed and calm, but he found there were hardly any pilgrims at that place, which he expected to be. I had been told that at the height of the pilgrimage season, the town was bustling with visitors. Many brought their own accommodation, enlarging the settlement round its edges as they set up their tents, which spilled down onto the plain. I had timed my arrival for the beginning of the season, but it seemed I was too early. So, he did not find the pilgrims as he was been expecting during the, which is been a normal aspect during the pilgrim season, okay. So, in pilgrimage season, there are lot of visitors and who used to set their tents, and they used to reside in their tents, but he did not find like that, and he felt that probably he had reached a bit earlier to that peak season, okay. One afternoon, I sat pondering my options over a glass of tea in Darchen's only cafe. After a little consideration, I concluded they were severely limited. Clearly, I hadn't made much progress with my self-help program on positive thinking. So, here, since he was been recovering out of that, he in the afternoon he was having a tea in one of the cafes, and he finally was looking for what can be the various options so that he can take up that Quora, for which he was been here, okay. And he was been considering all the various aspects, and though he was quite positive, but still he found that there were very less options. In my defense, it hadn't been easy with all my sleeping difficulties, but however I looked at it, I could only wait. The pilgrimage trail was well trodden, but I didn't fancy doing it alone. The Quora was seasonal because parts of route were liable to blockage by snow. I had no idea whether or not the snow had cleared, but I wasn't encouraged by the chunks of dirty ice that still clung to the banks of the Darchen's brook. Since Satan had left, I hadn't come across anyone in Darchen with enough English to answer even these most basic questions. So, he was, though he was been recovering out of his sleeping disorders which he was experiencing earlier, but still he did not want to go to a well trodden means which has been walked, which had been walked by many people, that route, okay, but still he did not want to take up that complete Korah all alone, because he was hardly having any idea about that place, and he just had he had a thought also in the back of mind that probably maybe at some parts the route may be blocked because of the ice also, and also another problem was that he was not finding any person over there who could understand English and who can explain him and answer his few of the questions. Until that is, I met Norbu. The cafe was small, dark and cavernous, with a long metal stove that ran down the middle. The walls and ceiling were weathered in sheets of multicolored. Now, see here, multicolored plastics. So, he just met Norbu over there in the cafe, which was quite dark, and it was been lots of covering of multicolored plastic of the stripped variety. Broad blue, red, white, and that is made into stout voluminous shopping bags sold all over China and in many other countries of Asia as well as Europe. As such, plastic must rate as one of China's most successful exports along the Silk Road today. So, today he was been explaining that how the walls were been looking and how they were being covered by those plastics, okay, the plastic bags, and he also explains that how China is doing good in the export of plastic nowadays through the Silk Road. The cafe had a single window beside which I had taken up position so that I could see the pages of my notebook. I had also brought a novel with me to help pass the time. So, he was spending his time, he was having a novel also, and he was trying to read his notebook also, and he was sitting just next to the window. Norbu saw my book when he came in and asked with a gesture if he could sit opposite to me at my rickety table. So, when Norbu he came, he saw that book in his hand, in the narrator's hand, and that made him to come, and he just took the seat opposite to him. I told him Norbu he asked a question, "You English?" he inquired, but he had ordered tea. I told him I was, and we struck up a conversation. So, finally, with this acknowledgement that yes, I know English, the narrator and Norbu, they started with a conversation. I did not think he was from those parts because he was wearing a wind cheater and metal rimmed spectacles of a western style. So, his outfit and the way he was been carrying himself was quite different from the local people, okay. So, that is why he identified that he does not belong to that region, okay. He was Tibetan, he told me, but worked in Beijing as in the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in the Institute of Ethnic Literature. So, he was been doing job in China, and though he from his native he belonged to Tibet. So, he was been working in the Academy of Social Science in the Institute of Ethnic Culture. Now, I assumed he was on some sort of field work. So, he was also here for his research work probably. Yes and no, he said, I have come to do the Korah. My heart jumped. Norbu had been writing academic papers about the Kailash Kora and its importance in various works of Buddhist literature for many years. He told me, but he had never actually done it himself. So now Norbu came out with the reason for which he has been here, and he revealed that he is also here to complete his Kora, and as he was been writing an academic paper, academic research paper and academic paper on the various aspects about the Kailash Kora, on which he was been working for quite some time, but he has not actually done that. So now this time he has been here to do it actually physically. He was here to take up the Kora. When the time came for me to tell him what brought me to Darchen, his eyes lit up. We could be a team, he said excitedly, two academics who have escaped from the library. Perhaps my positive thinking strategy was working after all. So finally, Nobu, he was in a very excited manner offered that they can pair up together for the Kora and they can be a team, and this is how the narrator was been thinking that the positive thinking is actually been working, and he had found someone to so that he can also take up his Kora and he won't be left alone. My initial relief at meeting Nobu, who was also staying in the guest house, was tempered by the realization that he was almost as ill-equipped as I was for the pilgrimage. He kept telling me how fat he was and how hard it was going to be. Very high up, he kept reminding me, so tiresome to walk. He isn't really a practicing Buddhist. It transpired, but he had enthusiasm and he was, of course, Tibetan. So finally, Norbu, he was not been very equipped, and even the narrator was also not been very equipped for the various things which were required to take up that complete Kora, and that is how, so he was Buddhist. Norbu, he was a Buddhist, but then too he was not very hardcore religious practicing person, but he still was a native of Tibet. He was a Tibetan by native. Okay. Although I had originally envisaged making the trek in the company of devout believers, on reflection I decided that perhaps Nobu would turn out to be the ideal companion. He suggested we hire some yaks to carry our luggage, which I interpreted as a good sign, and he had no intention of protesting himself all round the mountain. Not possible, he cried, collapsing across the table in hysterical laughter. It wasn't his style, and anyway his tummy was too big. So he was basically, Nobu was a bit fat, and he was been all the time he was been telling about this to the narrator, and then later on, while making all the preparations, he decided that they will narrator, he found that Norbu will be an ideal companion because he knew lot of things over there. So they suggested that they will take up yaks also, so that they can it will be easier for them to take up the complete Kora, and in this manner finally they kept on planning how they will take up Kora, and the companionship of Norbu was been really quite relaxing and exciting for the narrator. So in this manner finally the narrator was been able to take up his Kora. So students, I would suggest please go through the PDF and the video. I hope you will understand the chapter. Thank you, students.